Yeah, David Dread of Steel Pulse, and I'm saying hail to Lion Voice because it's time that the lion have its voice, have its own story. Says I'm stepping out here. Hear me now. Yeah, the lion's voice. Raw.
I'm Nana Faraka. The time has come for the lioness to tell her story from her viewpoint and tell the world who Queen Omega is. This is the lion's voice.
My great-grandmother was Empress Menen. Before she married Emperor Haile Selassie, she was married to 3 other people, and one of them was Jantrar Amede,
Yes.
of whom she got the son, who was her son, called Jantrar Gabriel, who was my grandfather and the father of my mother.
Okay.
So the Empress is my great-grandmother on my maternal side.
Yes.
And I cannot tell you what kind of not only love and respect, but I idolize Empress Menen.
Oh, wow. Talk to us about what's your first memory of the emperor?
You won't believe it. My very first the remaining emperor was as a child.
Yes, yes.
I had mumps that didn't go back. So I was operated. And in those days, you know, I must have been about 3 or 4 years of age.
Okay.
In those days, you had these terrible anesthetic called ether, which they dropped on your nose and so forth. So I wake from this operation, and who is standing at my bedside? My grandfather, Ras Kassa, and the Emperor of Ethiopia.
Oh.
And you know, I'll never forget the operation was done in Emperor Haile Selassie's hospital, which in those days was immediately next to the Gannat al Palace.
Okay.
So for the 2 weeks I spent in hospital, special care was done because the doctors ordered for me that the best thing I could do was to eat ice cream every day. So the ice cream came from the Imperial Palace every day for me. So, you see, this is my very first
memory.
You know, in the remembrance of His Imperial Majesty. Can you imagine waking from from anesthetics, and the Emperor of Ethiopia is on your bedside? If you ask me what is the expression of your Ethiopianness? To be anywhere near the Emperor of Ethiopia when the national anthem was played. This was the most divine, this was for me what Ethiopia was.
Okay.
These 2 things. And seeing the Emperor, when he saluted the flag, the national anthem was played, that was the embodiment of Ethiopia for me as a child.
Wow, wow. So what was it? What was his personality like? We see the pictures, we see the stoic face, the piercing eyes. What was he like for you as a a relative of yours behind the scenes? What was his character like?
Unbelievable, of course, daunting in many ways, indescribable. Whenever, of course, you went to see him during the big holidays and, the main Christian festivities, I remember, of course, the Christmas parties for children, which he gave in the palace, He was playing really for us the role of a wonderful grandfather, and that is how I saw him as a young man. Interestingly enough, I never made any discrimination, or I didn't distinguish between my paternal grandfather, Ras Kassa, and the Emperor of Ethiopia. For me, these were two people which I saw as one. The word Lion of Judah
Yes.
had nothing to do with the titles of the Ethiopian emperors.
Okay.
You know how it developed?
How?
In the 15th century, when the first contact came between Ethiopia and Portugal, the Ethiopian emperors used to begin every letter with the words, "The Lion of Judah will prevail."
Okay.
The ADC of the emperor rings up my father and tells him, His Imperial Majesty has commanded me to tell you, you and your wife and your firstborn son should come to the Jubilee Palace tomorrow at 1600 hours. My father said, what the hell have you done? And he didn't quite understand what it could be. So we really were open to everything, but not to what happened. And we went there, and he greeted us warmly in very familiar ways. And then I'll never forget what he said. In a time when our eyes were shut and we were unable to see the sufferings of our people, the Almighty gave you the foresight to realize this and to help your country. We have called you today to bless you and to tell you how proud we are of you.
Wow.
And that is, I must confess, one of the last times I saw the Ethiopian emperor.
Yes, sorry to. And we say Tafari, but it's really Taferi. Is that correct?
Tafari. Tafari is his baptismal name. Yes,
and what does that translate?
The man who is to be feared.
Okay.
Or the man who is feared by everybody. You see, this is the problem. It is that his vision of how to rule the world was always centralized. And I'm not saying that for those days that centralization did play an important role.
Yes.
But that was absolutely not everything that Ethiopia required. It required also the acceptance of all the natural leaders of the different provinces. And had the Ethiopian Emperor Haile Selassie I, had he got the same kind of vision as Emperor Menelik, he would have allowed those kingdoms to continue as long as they felt as one nation, as long as there was no reason for secession. There are many people who believe the last Ethiopian emperor was very traumatic about the other tribes. He only favored the Amharas.
Yes.
Absolutely untrue.
Yes.
The late emperor of Ethiopia, he didn't care what color you were, which ethnic group you belonged, whether you were Muslim and whether you were a Christian. For him, one thing mattered, and that was loyalty. You see, that is it. You cannot say that the Ethiopian emperor, Haile Selassie I, favored one of the many ethnic groups in Ethiopia. He treated them equally. First of all, I should say that the only people at this very moment who are still raising the standard of African unity, of Pan-Africanism, are our brothers and sisters, the Rastafarians. I'm afraid you won't find that kind of Pan-Africanistic feeling that I grew up with. I must tell you a beautiful story. I was 15 years of age in 1963 when the Organization of African Unity was founded.
Okay.
As I told you, I was in the German school, and we had a game between Ethiopian students. You went up to an Ethiopian fellow pupil, and said, "Where do you come from?" He said, "Are you out of your mind? I am a 100% Ethiopian." Bang, wrong answer. What am I supposed to say? Well, that was yesterday. From today on, you have to say, I am an African. This is how I grew up with. And this is the feeling that I see up to this very moment in our brothers and sisters from the Rastafari movement. I adore them for that. And we are very, very proud that they're still upholding this institution.
Well, lion voice, tell them that's the people first choice. Lion voice, make the lioness them feel nice. Lion voice, with the lion cubs we sacrifice. Lion voice, got to show the people them the life. Lion voice.
Alright, so continuing on with family, we're going to talk about the drums right now. The bass drum is the foundation. It gives off that frequency. It encompasses and surrounds and keeps the Ayabingi within a one place. It's always on the one. One sound, one mute. Alright, very important.
The more aware you are of yourself, the more you come to know yourself, the more mindful you are, okay, is the more skilled you become at using this powerful engine, which is your mind.
And then the resolution is like just finishing up the lessons now and just saying yes, and reminding people of the theme of your story. So, you know, the theme of this story was the importance of agriculture.
For the motherland, cradle of civilization, for the ancestors and their indomitable spirit, for the elders whom we can learn much, for the youth who represent our promise for tomorrow, for the people, the original people, for the struggle and remembrance of those who struggled on our behalf, for Umoja, the principle of unity that guides us in all we do, for the Creator who created all of the things great and small. We give thanks.
Let's go through the principles. The first one, blessed love and greetings. Welcome to day 5, our last day of camp. That's sad, right? Too short. Just when I started to have fun, it's over. But it's been fun, and we'll do this again next year, most definitely. Looking forward to seeing you all again, and stay connected after camp.
Government is trapping the system.
Dano, I'm so hungry, bro. I haven't eaten all day. Like, my head started to hurt me too. Like, what more could I eat right now?
What about a city samosa? Get your samosa, a fusion of Indian, Jamaican, and African culture. City samosas, the best samosas in the city.
Well, front to us a son was born and a child was given, and the government shall be upon his shoulders, and his name shall be called the Wonderful Counselor, Everlasting Father, the Prince of Peace. Them call him Rastafari. When he was born, rain fall from the sky. Them call him Rastafari. When he was grown in airplanes he fly. They call him Rastafari. The lion break the chain, weep not, don't cry. Them call him Rastafari. Read the Revelation chapter 5 verse 5. Then born near the city of Harar, the inspiration for Bob Marley's guitar. People crowd him like some big superstar. It no matter if England or Cote d'Ivoire, no matter if you're brown or black like Qatar. Haile Selassie I end all tribal war. Time fi gather Mount Zion, fi drive solar car from the car straight to Zanzibar. Who we are, the sons of Rastafari. When he was born, rain fall from the sky. Rastafari. When he was grown in airplanes he fly. Then Rastafari. The lion break the chain, weep not, don't cry. Then Rastafari. Read the Revelation chapter 5 verse 5. Royal governor from the age of 13 years. Leave the palace, fi go back in a school with him peers. He's the head without fear, he's one to be revered. When them call his name, then the heathen scare. Plus the priest concerned, and him teachers concerned. Cause all this little youth want fi do is just learn. But he wait his turn, till him turn the Dejazmatch. The people rejoice when him crown as the Ras, they call him Rastafari. When he was born, rain fall from the sky. Then Rastafari. When he was grown in airplanes he fly. Then Rastafari. The lion break the chain, weep not, don't cry. Then Rastafari. Read your Revelation chapter 5 verse 5.
What do you have to tell the people about Rastafari?
Light to the world. King of kings and the conquering line of the tribe of Judah. I left himself. Where's ruler? Hey yo! Eli! Hear them high, hear the black king on the 23rd of July. So tell them guy who praise God up in the sky, it's a lie. The Almighty living on your night. From ancient time, them a try. Them Romans know them just open them suit and ties. Criminals ain't got no alibi. They stole my people, then them come without them genocide.
Are you talking about slavery?
Them couldn't kill the lion way come conquer Judah tribe. Go through tribulation, I and I strive, see sufferation, I and I still rise. That's why we tell them in America, live Rastafari in every ghetto area. We come if you tell them in a Toronto, straight at Greetings in that divine name of His Imperial Majesty Emperor Haile Selassie I. Glory and honor in the name of his chosen queen, Empress Menen. My name is Kwasi Bonsu, aka DejazmatchKwasi, aka Ras Kassa, aka the Reading Ras, aka the Pan-African Happy Man. I'm a creative industry attorney, I'm an author, I'm an artist, I'm an actionist, and right now I am the host of Lion Talk. Welcome to Lion Talk and welcome to the Lion Voice Network, where the lions are telling our own story. Today's episode is historic, it's monumental. I stand in awe. I am honored to present our guest today, someone who is directly related to His Imperial Majesty Emperor Haile Selassie I and to Empress Menen, and also
someone who has distinguished themselves in their own right through their professional career, Prince of the Royal Bloodline. Tonight we are going to go deep into Ethiopian history. I them know I am a historian of Ethiopian history, and so I am in heaven right now. So if you see me smiling, just know that I am elated. And I am, want to just big up my brethren, Lich Nebiu, for the connection for this interview. All Lion Pride, you already know, support the platform. This is one of those episodes that will be remembered. So I'm not even going to take too long. Without further ado, help I to welcome a warm welcome down in the comments for Prince Asfa Wossen Asserate. I may have said it wrong.
Asserate.
Okay, sorry. Prince, please give a warm welcome for Prince Asfa Wossen Asserate. Welcome to the Lion Voice.
It's a great pleasure to be with you, my dear brother. Yes. And what a great pleasure to be interviewed exactly one day before the birthday of His late Imperial Majesty, Haile Selassie I.
Yes. We are preparing here in Washington, D.C. We have a Nyabingi gathering happening. The fire will be lit at midnight, and we will have 2 days of celebration for the birthday of His Majesty. So this is a very special time for Rastafari all around the world. And I know that you have been very vocal about the Rastafari community, and we'll get there. But we have a tradition here on Lion Talk Show. You're on one of the fastest growing Rastafari platforms on the planet. And all of our guests, we ask them to step into our Lion Talk time machine and to take us to the moment of their birth. Where were you born? We want you to tell your story, the origin story of your life. What was it like? What year? And then take us up to the present. Thank you.
Well, I'm very glad to be with you on this program. I was born on the 31st day of October 1948.
Okay.
In the Ethiopian calendar, it would be the 21st day of Tikamt, 1941.
Okay.
I was born in Addis Ababa, in my father's house. It's very interesting, after the Ethiopian Orthodox faith,
yes,
men or male children are baptized at the age of 40 days.
Yes,
and female members of the family on the 80th day, simply because, unfortunately, of the role that Eve played in getting us banished from heaven. Anyway, what happened? I have to really tell the story.
Yes, please.
In these days, you were plunged into water, into this ice-cold water,
okay,
and you were not allowed to have thermos flasks of warm water, which people do today.
Yes.
So there I was, and after the baptism, I had a double pneumonia.
Wow.
And I was basically half dead.
Wow.
And it is a miracle that I survived that. And my dear aunt, Lady Ras Kassa, used to tell me, you will never get ill in your life because you've had all your illness in the first 40 days of your life.
Wow.
So that was really amazing. And I give that honor to the lady on whose day I was born, the Holy Virgin Mary, because the 21st day is the day of the Virgin Mary, and she is my patron saint. and my Christian, my second name, or let me say my baptismal name, as you know,
Yes.
you have two names in Ethiopia, is Sars Adingil, which means the son of the Holy Virgin.
Okay, okay. So, talk to us about your parents, your line, because you have a very esteemed line. I wrote about it in my book. You wrote a book. I want the people to understand exactly the significance of your birth.
Well, I was born into a very incredible family. My father, the late Ras Kassa, was the son of that scion of Ethiopian aristocracy, Ras Kassa Haile, direct cousin of the Emperor Haile Selassie.
Yes.
About 6 years older than him.
Okay.
One of the few Ethiopian princes who never deserted Emperor Haile Selassie in his old time.
That's
you
a
could
fact.
say that of very few
Yes.
Ethiopian princes. A devout churchman, a man, a philosopher,
yes.
A man who led the Ethiopian army in the Northern Front in 1936.
Yes.
And the man who came immediately after the emperor in those days of Ethiopia, of the Ethiopian Empire. My father was his youngest son, as his three elder brothers were martyred by the Italians in 1936 after having been the first patriot leaders in Ethiopia.
Yes.
So, you know, my father was with his father in exile in Bath, of course, with His Imperial Majesty.
Yes.
He went to school near Bath in a place called Monkton Combe, which is a public school. And, you know, that's what one has to understand the relationship between my father and the emperor.
Yes.
You see, whenever in latter years, I'm quite sure when he saw my father or when my father demanded anything from him, he must have seen this young boy whom he used to go and visit in school, you know, bringing him, you know, sweets and seeing him off on holidays and things like this. So you can imagine that kind of relationship, which one was formal and the other one was really based. And I'm quite sure throughout the years after the death of my grandfather in 1957, where my father slowly took the position of his father, I'm quite sure His Imperial Majesty must have had this feeling, what is this young boy trying to tell me? You know, I've been dealing with his father all the time, if you know what I mean.
Yes.
So it's a wonderful relationship. And I'm proud to say that also my father, despite his very liberal views, and despite the fact that we will come back to it afterwards, he died a staunch supporter of his emperor. He, when he left him, it should be known, he said, when he said goodbye to him, 3 days before, he knew very well when he was going to be arrested, and he told him, my son is going to bring you some papers because I'm going to be taken. And my brother, my younger brother, Mulgita, brought him. The first thing he did after my father was taken by the officers, he went to the palace. The emperor was waiting for him, and he handed him a large envelope, which my father had given him. He said to him, open it. He opened it, and you know what was in it?
What was in it?
Correspondence between my father and all, from mostly the embassy of the United States, the embassy of Her Britannic Majesty's government in Addis Ababa, asking, pleading with them to give the emperor refuge. And it's unbelievable. My brother told me that the Americans said, should he leave the country, we will give him refuge. The British didn't say anything.
Yes.
But that is really interesting. They didn't want to say, we'll give him refuge now. That means bring him to the embassy or something.
Yes.
But they said, only if he leaves. And the emperor had tears in his eyes after realizing this and said to my brother, today I lost my right hand.
Wow.
Which means my father.
Yes, that closeness. That
closeness, absolutely.
Yes, and I would be remiss if I didn't take the opportunity to ask you to just give us a brief biography of Ras Kassa, because I have a younger audience, and some of these names, these are legendary names in the annals of Ethiopian history, resistance. I heard a story that I want to know if it's true, if because His Majesty gave a mercy proclamation not to do to the Italians what they had visited. I heard that Ras Kassa got a small exemption from that. This is rumors that I'm hearing. So I want you to give us a history and biography of who is Ras Kassa.
Ras Kassa, as I told you, is a very close cousin of the late emperor. He stems from the Solomonic line in the male side, being the grandson of the emperor. And as you know, the emperor comes from the female side, Princess Tenainuark. And my grandfather was brought up in the house of Ras Darge Haile Selassie, who was the uncle of the then Emperor Menelik II.
Yes.
And it's a divine story.
Yes.
But he should also be the stepfather of Princess Yeshemebet, who was the mother of the emperor.
Yes.
I don't know if you want to hear it, but it is
please.
story.
No, this is the place for this story.
Yes, it is unbelievable. You see, my great grandfather Ras Darge was taken prisoner in Shoa by Emperor Theodore when he came to Shoa, and the king of Shoa, Nugus Haile Selassie, had already died, but at that time it was the father of Menelik had taken the throne, Haile Melekot. Haile Melekot had died, and then Emperor Theodore, took all the Shoan princes to Gondar and imprisoned them there. After a year,
was it Gondar or Magdala in one?
No, it was Gondar. It was Gondar.
Gondar. Okay.
It was absolutely Gondar. By the way, Magdala is not in the province of Begemder. It is in the province of Wollo.
Yes.
Anyway, this is. They went there, and after a year, they went to the emperor and said, "Your Majesty, we have been prisoners for over a year. Will you allow us to bring in our wives from Shoa?"
Yes.
And he said, "Go ahead and do that." So Ras Darge orders that his wife should be brought by, as you know, by caravan, mules, and so forth, to Gondar. By the way, his wife was a most beautiful lady from the province of Silte. She was the daughter of one of the aristocrats of Silte, a most beautiful woman.
Okay.
When she went, and so she's on her way to Gondar, and during those days, if you wanted to go from Shoa to Gondar, you had to go via the province of Wollo.
Okay.
And there is a very important place of transport, which she was bypassing, and the man who was the leader of that province, of that sub-province, was a man called Ali Goncho, a Wollo Muslim nobleman.
Okay.
By the way, the name of that little city was Ahiyafej.
Okay.
So she goes to Ahiyafej. She sees this most astounding lady and beautiful lady. And he said, no, you're not going anywhere. and keeps her there.
Yes.
She becomes pregnant. She gets a daughter.
Okay.
Now, Emperor Theodore has committed suicide. The princes and the noblemen of Shoa are allowed to go back.
Yes.
And Ras Darge goes via Ahiyafej and finds his wife and a daughter.
Okay.
And he's supposed to have said, now, you and I are no longer are no longer husband and wife, but brothers and sisters. But this girl that has been born is my daughter.
Okay.
You see? And so she's raised by Ras Darge. And when at the very tender age, she must not have been older than 14.
Yes.
He gave her as a bride to his favorite cousin, Lunaras Makonde.
Makonnen.
Makonde. You see, Makonde was the big head who was the father of the late emperor.
Yes, yes, yes.
You see, and that is how closely we are bred together. Nobody would realize that there also this kind of, call it is not a blood relationship, but it is an incredible kind of togetherness that you see.
That's so powerful. And
yes.
What, and are there any pictures that exist of Yoshima bit?
I mean, I wish I had. I have never been able to trace any picture of her or of my great grandmother, whom, by the way, the emperor in his memoirs very fondly says in his memoirs, the most beautiful years of my life
I remember.
are the days that I spent in Harar as governor of Harar with my grandmother, Wezero Walette Georgis. Yes, whom he probably was very close to, interestingly.
Yes, of course.
So he mentions her there, but I'm afraid...
Was she not Goragi?
Oh, no, Silte. But they used to be the same. You are absolutely right. They used to be one, but now they have a different... The Siltes have their own zone. So, so let us use it. Let's use that word. And when you see, this is the most beautiful side of the Ethiopian Empire. The late emperor was the 225th monarch, from the Solomonic dynasty. And I promise you, not one of them, not one of the 225 Ethiopian emperors stemmed from one ethnic group.
Okay.
I ask anybody to tell me that there is an emperor who comes from one ethnic group. Take, for example, the great Emperor Johannes, who was supposed to be Tigrayan. Yes, he was Tigrayan on his father's side, but his mother came from Wollo.
Okay.
You see, it is unbelievable. So this is the glory of being an Ethiopian, We are a truly mixed race. And all this terrible thing about ethnicity today, we'll come back to it, is preposterous.
What is the meaning of Abyssinia?
Well, you're so right. I like this word because it comes from Habash, and in Arabic, Habash means nothing more than mixed race. They might have taken it, in the not positive sense, saying they are bastards, they are Semitic and Hamitic and God knows what else. But for me, it is my Ethiopian identity. Being a Habesha, being a man of truly many ethnic groups. This is how I feel. That is why I really see myself as a prototype of an African.
I was just about to say that it's enigmatic of African culture. All of the
Absolutely.
African nations are many people, many
Yes.
different nations and cultures, intermarriage, and this
Yes.
tribalism, which is a false
Of
concept.
course.
You know
Absolutely.
what I mean? That has divided us for millennia, and
Yeah.
we're gonna get to the role His Majesty played in minimizing the tribalism and fighting against tribalism. But this is a fascinating history. I want all of our audience to really appreciate love, because we study the history, but you have lived it. These are your family members that we read incessantly about, that we marvel. I'm going to take a slight detour because I'm also a wildlife. I love wildlife, and to me, I'm fascinated because I know in those days it took maybe a month to travel from Harar to Addis. It took a long time. You had to have mules, you had horses, there's a caravan, you're going through undeveloped spaces. Did you ever hear any stories about the wildlife of Ethiopia in those days before the war, and those days of your grandparents? Did they ever talk about that? Is it oral tradition, the Ethiopian black maned lion, these things that we hear about?
Well, undoubtedly, Ethiopia was full of wild animals in the 19th century.
Yes.
And, Emperor Menelik, our great, great Emperor Menelik II, do you know he was the first African to forbid, the killing of wild beasts?
Okay.
That it had to be, sponsored, and the government would have to give you license.
Okay.
To kill an elephant or to kill a lion.
Okay.
And very few people know this. And so you can say he was one of the first ecologists that Ethiopia ever had.
Okay.
So in those days, these, as you rightly remarked, the road from Addis Ababa to Harar was unbelievably wild. And you had to get protection from the animals. Of course, that was also the greatness, that you had all kinds of animals there in that part of the country.
Yes.
And it was not really open. You cannot go and kill whatever you like.
Okay.
The government at a very early age already had its hands on the greater beasts that we had in Ethiopia.
What was the protocol around the lion mane cloaks? How were those lions called? What was did the warrior have to hunt that lion themselves? What was the
Absolutely?
Okay.
You were actually, in former times, there was a tradition saying that when before becoming a grown-up, you had to go and kill a lion.
Okay.
You see, to show your manhood. You went with your father and so forth into the wilderness, and you killed a lion, and you became really a mature male by that time.
Okay.
It was one of the things. But of course, the lion was the embodiment of the Ethiopian emperors.
Yes.
And of our religion. You see, the word Lion of Judah has nothing to do with the titles of the Ethiopian emperors.
Okay.
You know how it developed?
How?
In the 15th century, when the first contact came between Ethiopia and Portugal, the Ethiopian emperors used to begin every letter with the words, "The Lion of Judah will prevail."
Okay.
It is out of the Bible.
Yes.
The Lion of Judah is Jesus Christ and nobody else.
Okay.
And what they were trying to say is, I am a Christian.
Okay.
It's another way of saying. It is, as it is not a title, but it is a pretext. It is how they begin the words when they write.
Okay.
The Lion of Judah prevaileth. Mo'a ambasa zemnegede Yehuda.
Okay.
It is another word to say we are Christians.
Okay.
You see, and then it slowly developed as being the title. But this is only done in the European sense.
Okay.
The Ethiopian emperors themselves they never saw themselves as lions of Judah.
Okay.
This was their motto. For example, the motto of the British hereditary crown prince is a German one called Ich dien, which means I serve. You see, which you find in all his in his coat of arms. And
Okay.
that was what you found in every letter, in every coat of arms around the lion, which was the Ethiopian symbol, as you know, for
Yes.
centuries.
Yes.
That
Yes.
you had this word. So it is the motto. It is the motto, not the title.
But how did they reconcile the Solomonic bloodline, which of course
By the
would
picture.
call them the house of
But
Judah? Go ahead.
because Jesus Christ was of the house of David.
Okay.
Don't
Okay.
forget that. You know, that Jesus as a human being, when he became a
Yes.
human being, who was his father? He wasn't his real father, but his guardian father was
Jesus.
both
Yes.
Joseph and the Holy Virgin herself stems from the house of David.
Yes. Yes.
You see?
So is
So,
that taken literally among the Solomonic bloodline of?
absolutely.
Okay.
Very much so. Very much so. By the way, when
Yes.
I wrote my memoirs, I'm
Yes.
afraid that's only available in German. It's
Okay.
the title was at that time a Prince of the House of David and why he remained in Germany.
Okay.
That was the title. And then one day, when the book was presented, a journalist asked me, a member of the House of David. So you are also related with our Savior, Jesus Christ. I said, of course I am. Like you. Aren't we all the children of God? So that kept him quiet. He probably wanted to have another.
Because there is some thinking that the lineage was manufactured in the Kebra in the 13th century with Ambition, and that it doesn't stretch forward. I'm not advocate of that philosophy.
No.
I take it as a literal fact,
Yes.
enshrined in the Constitution of 1931 and again in the Constitution of 1955. The only constitutional claim to the House of David that I'm aware of all the nations of the earth,
Absolutely.
including the political state of Israel. So I find this very significant, Ethiopia history, and I am so glad that you, as someone who carries that bloodline. And for Rastafari, we see ourselves as children of His Majesty, so we see ourselves as no different than the I. But you would still have the literal bloodline, and for that, there is a degree of reverence. Because for me, the Bible wasn't real until I learned about Ethiopia, because I learned about this covenant sworn unto David, and it says that you will have a man-child to sit on the throne as long as the sun and the moon endure. And the only place on earth I saw that as a history was in Ethiopia. So for me, if Ethiopia does not exist, then the Bible is not true, and Ethiopia's existence and the fact that it was never conquered, to me, shows that divine blessing. And also the fact that your melanin, the way that you look, also again to me affirms the true identity of Israel, of Jacob. We know that the language of Hebrew is Afro-Semitic, Afro-Asiatic, and not Indo-European as some would have had us to believe. We know that the customs that we see in Deuteronomy, in Exodus, are all over the continent. The animal sacrifice, the different dietary laws. You can go all throughout African society and see these retentions, cultural retentions, and that the Hebrews are an extension of the Nile Valley civilization. How do you, as a born Ethiopian, because it's getting fashionable for people to look at Kemet, Egypt, as the fountain of our Pan-African identity, but I always learned that Kemet was a daughter of Ethiopia. How do you view Ethiopia's relationship with the great Nile Valley civilizations.
You see, it is very interesting, my brother.
Yes.
Archaeologically speaking,
Yes, yes.
this is unbelievable. We have the one trace we have about Ethiopia's relationship to the pharaonic
Yes.
Egypt
Yes.
was a stone, a bit of stone that was
Yes.
given to the man who came to look for the birth of the Nile,
Yes.
his name. He was a Scotsman from England in the 18th century, called Bruce. James Bruce came to
Yes.
Gonda, and he's regarded as having been the man who found out where the Nile comes from,
Yes.
who first said that it was Lake Tana.
Yes.
Anyway, Yasu the Great,
Yes.
I'm so sorry.
No problem. You're
Anyway,
Yasu the Great.
Yasu the Great gives him a slab of stone, which you still can find in the Museum of Scotland in Edinburgh. You see, and nobody can say it's a slab of stone from Ptolemaic times, which comes from Egypt.
Yes.
How did it get there? How did it get there? Until this very day, nobody can tell us. On the other hand, as you know, the Old Testament tells us that as a prince of Egypt, Moses was one of the greatest generals of Ramses, and who went into the south to conquer Ethiopia.
Yes.
And his mother, and because of that, his wife was Ethiopian.
Yes.
You see? And so there must have been very close ties.
Yes.
But
yes.
we have so very little. I mean, can you imagine? I mean, the remnants of the pharaohic rule are not only in Egypt, as you know better than I. They're also to be found in the Sudan, which you see, that is where you had a great tradition, a great civilization amongst them. But very few people know that.
Yes.
Many few people know that in the 3rd and 4th up to the 6th century, Ethiopia used to intervene to go, once Ethiopia had become Christian, had gone into the Sudan to actually to help Christians in Sudan who were being invaded by heathens and later on by the Muslims.
That was during Izana time.
It is later. It was the time of our great king, who also used to govern the Yemen, Caleb.
Caleb. Yes.
Caleb.
Yes.
Absolutely.
Caleb,
yeah.
Yes. And also, I think it's very important to recognize that His Majesty, and we'll talk about this, was able to grant the Church of Ethiopia autocephaly from the church in Egypt, and there were ties to the Coptics and all of these things. So there's a long history and connection with Ethiopia.
Our Christianity does not come from Europe.
Yes.
Ethiopia's Christianity comes from Alexandria.
Yes.
You see, the first Ethiopian bishop was ordained by the Pope in Alexandria. Don't forget, there were two popes.
Yes.
One in Alexandria, who has the right to be called Pope, and the one in Rome.
Yes.
You see, so absolutely of the same rank. There are only two popes. There are only two places where you can use the name. And that is, one is Rome, and the other one is Alexandria. And the Pope of Alexandria was the one who gave us the first bishop. We call him Abba Salama, Kasati Abraham. They call him Frumentius.
Yes.
The first Ethiopian bishop.
Was he Syrian?
He was of Syrian origin, absolutely.
Okay.
Of Syrian origin, but he traveled to Alexandria to be granted this title. And he was then
Now,
accepted by Azana. Yes.
what about Philip the eunuch? Because
This is
my contention is that Christianity was already in Ethiopia through the works
absolutely
of Philip the eunuch,
beautiful. You're
and
right.
and also I was told that Saint Matthew spent time
Absolutely.
in Ethiopia, according to
You
the
see,
tradition of the church.
absolutely. We know about St. Philip,
Yes,
baptizing the first Ethiopian,
yes,
who was the finance minister of the Queen Kandake,
yeah,
as the Bible tells us. Now,
yes,
of course, he comes to Ethiopia, and of course, he baptizes his entire family and his
yes,
house. So we know that already in the first century AD, we had Ethiopian Christians.
yes,
And that is the reason why St. Matthew came, because the apostles always wanted to find connections wherever they traveled.
yes,
And of course, the man whom we know as Melchizedek, the first
yes,
Ethiopian Ethiopian to be converted into Christianity,
yes,
this minister of finance of the Ethiopian empress, he of course was there and they knew about him. That is why St. Matthew came. But
okay,
at that time, the emperors were still worshipping, were either Jewish or worshipping other gods, like
yes,
Al-Makkah, you see. They were
okay,
heathens in Aksum.
yes, yes,
And,
yes,
and, and that is unfortunately, that's a very interesting story, but that is why St. Matthew was then unfortunately also martyred in Ethiopia. And
yes,
there's a second story saying that another apostle, Matthias, came looking for Matthew, that he also came to Ethiopia. So there's
okay,
no doubt in that the Christianity first came to Ethiopia in the first century, but it did not become the national religion as it
and
did become in
yes,
330 at the time of Izana.
yes, 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 very, very powerful. Um, I also we're jumping around because I have a living archive, so forgive I
Please.
family. We're gonna get forward to the history, and there's so much, but I have to take this opportunity. A lot of people don't know that an Ethiopian general invaded Arabia during the time of Caleb as well, and that Ethiopia conquered large swaths of both Yemen and Arabia. It's oftentimes portrayed that Arabians came into Ethiopia, and that is why the mixture. But I tell people all the time, any mixture was because Ethiopia conquered and occupied Arabia, and not the other way around.
Absolutely.
How do you think about that?
You're absolutely right. As a matter of fact, it was part of the Ethiopian Empire. I mean, parts of Yemen were
Yes,
part of the Ethiopian Empire in Caleb's time. We're talking about the 7th
yes,
century. And there was
yes,
Caleb himself. This is why I myself is one of my greatest idols.
yes,
He
yes, yes,
goes there because there was a king
yes,
who was supposed to be a Jew,
yes,
who was trying to get rid of all his Christian subjects, and Caleb himself went there, invaded Yemen, brought that king down, and established and named a governor by the name of Abraha, and he came back to Ethiopia. And you know what he did?
What did he do?
He leaves his crown and gives it to his son and goes to a monastery.
Wow,
At the height of his greatness.
of his greatness.
Yes, there is only another person I know who did that, and that
Yes,
was King Charles I of Spain.
okay.
Who,
And
who, who came much later in the 16th century, and of whom it was said that in his empire the sun never set down,
wow,
because he had anything from Spain to the Philippines,
yes,
was all Spanish, and this man, at the height of his rule, he completely forgets this world and goes to a monastery. We'll
Wow.
come back to this afterwards.
Yes, yes, beautiful. Now, I want to jump forward to your lineage because one of my good sisters contacted me when I told her that I was interviewing me, and she said that you're related not only on His Majesty's side of the family, but also Empress Menen
That's
side of
right.
the family with one of her children before
That
His
is
Majesty. Can you outline that,
absolutely.
that part of your lineage?
My great grandmother was Empress Menen. Before she married Emperor Haile Selassie, she was married to 3 other people, and one of them was Jantrar Amede,
Yes.
of whom she got the son, who was her son, called Jantrar Gabriel, who was my grandfather and the father of my mother.
Okay.
So the Empress is my great grandmother on my maternal side.
Yes.
And I cannot tell you what kind of not only love and respect, but I idolize Empress Menen.
Oh, wow. My Rastafari sister and them are going to beat me if I don't ask you to
Yes,
describe Empress Menen and some of your
yes.
interactions with her from your
Well,
childhood.
from the day I was a child, one thing I would tell you to show what this woman was like, how much she cared for her family. My mother was in the 1960, had gone for an operation
Yes.
to London. And you know, the Empress used to come to our residence every week to see how the children were doing,
Wow.
bringing us the most unbelievable fruits, the unbelievable imported chocolates. For me, she is the epitome of goodness.
Wow.
I cannot put it further. So I have a deep love for her. And of course, I saw her also, a courageous stand. I was with her during the revolution in 1960. First
Okay.
of all, we were, but as children, my father was on the side of General Merid, the loyalist side, and
Yes.
but he had brought us to the house of the Crown Prince Asfa Wossen, and the Empress was in her villa at that time. And after they killed the ministers, and I remember it was a Friday, she all came together in Princess Tenanya's house in Addis Ababa.
Mm-hmm.
And that was the first time we saw her, she had tears in her eyes.
Wow.
When we embraced each other. And for me, as I say, I don't have enough words to express my feelings towards my great grandmother. She is the epitome of everything good that you can say about Ethiopia.
Wow. Talk to us about what's your first memory of the emperor growing up?
You won't believe it. My very first the remaining emperor was as a child.
Yes, yes.
I had mumps that didn't go back. So I was operated. And in those days, you know, I must have been about 3 or 4 years of age.
Okay.
In those days, you had these terrible anesthetic called ether, which
Yes.
they dropped on your nose and so forth. So I wake from this operation, and who is standing at my bedside? My grandfather, Ras Kassa, and the Emperor of Ethiopia.
Oh.
And you know, I'll never forget the operation was done in Emperor Haile Selassie's hospital, which in
Yes.
those days was immediately next to the Gannat al Palace.
Okay.
So for the 2 weeks I spent in hospital, special care was done because the doctors ordered for me that the best thing I could do was to eat ice cream every day. So the ice cream came from the Imperial Palace every day for me. So, you see, this is my very first,
Your first memory.
in the remembrance of His Imperial Majesty. Can you imagine waking from, from anesthetics, and the Emperor of Ethiopia is on your bedside?
Did you realize how important a figure he was at that young age? Did you have the?
Not only that, I mean, for me, my Ethiopianness, I have to tell you, as a child, up to my teenage days, was that if you ask me what is the expression of your Ethiopianness, to be anywhere near the Emperor of Ethiopia when the national anthem was played. This was the most divine, this was for me what Ethiopia was.
Okay.
These two things. And seeing the Emperor, when he saluted the flag, the national anthem was played, that was the embodiment of Ethiopia for me as a child.
Wow. So what was it? What was his personality like? We see the pictures, we see the stoic face, the piercing eyes. What was he like for you as a a relative of yours behind the scenes? What was his character like?
Unbelievable, of course, daunting in many ways, indescribable. Whenever, of course, you went to see him during the big holidays and, the main Christian festivities, I remember, of course, the Christmas parties for children, which he gave in the palace, He was playing, really, for us, the role of a wonderful grandfather. And that is how I saw him as a young man. Interestingly enough, I never made any discrimination, or I didn't distinguish between my paternal grandfather, Ras Kassa, and the Emperor of Ethiopia. For me, these were two people which I saw as one, So this is the feeling and the attitude I had to the Emperor in my early days of childhood, until I slowly grew up and became a teenager. And of course, things started to be a little different then.
Yes. Talk to us about the mental capacity of the emperor, because we read about all these feats. There's a book, The Mission, by Hans Lockhart, where he talks about the many languages spoken by His Majesty, the books and manuscripts that His Majesty collected. Did you get any exposure or any idea of the type of mind that the emperor had, and how would you characterize that level of thinking that you saw?
As far as I can gather, and I've seen myself, you're absolutely right. He was a great reader. He had a great collection of books. He believed in education as being the prime way to bring Ethiopia back to civilization. I say this because, I would say that Emperor Menelik II was the one who took us out of the Middle Ages into the 20th century.
Okay.
And Emperor Haile Selassie went on these footsteps.
Yes.
And completed this great vision which the great Emperor Menelik II had for us.
And
so these two people, are the really innovators. These are the two people that brought Ethiopia, let us call it by the name, from the Middle Ages into the 20th century.
Very, very powerful. Let us return, and I want to just clarify off camera, but we were reasoning, and you helped to clarify that Menelik brought the first printing press. I know I said sometime on this program His Majesty brought the first printing press. So I want to correct that. My elder, I'm a student, so my elder correct. We want to do that on the record, because yes, and I know that the first automobile Menelek also imported, and the first telephone you also correctly stated. So a lot of the first technology, modern technology, was imported by Emperor Menelik. However, I think we can say that it was scaled, the infrastructure, by Kadamawi Haile Selassie the first. You know, that His Majesty really took that. The first aeroplane was definitely His Majesty. You know,
absolutely right. Absolutely right.
And we say Tafari, but it's really Taferi. Is that correct?
Tafari. Tafari is his baptismal name. Yes, and not
and
his
what does that translate?
The man who is to be feared.
Okay.
Or the man who is feared by everybody.
Yes, we say
terrible.
Yes. Yes, we say it's terrible and dreadful among the heathen. Yes. So it's fitting. Talk to us about your matriculation through school, your professional life, and the work that because you in your own right, you know, separate from anything that your bloodline has done, you know, have distinguished yourself as a great Ethiopian. So I want people to know exactly your path to adulthood. Where did you go to school? And also, your story is an epic blockbuster film, because during the time of the Derg, you know, circumstances removed you from the Red Terror era. So give us your matriculation through school and into your professional life.
I'll be glad to do so. You see, I went to school in Addis Ababa, to the German school.
Yes.
And I was the first of 2 Ethiopians who ever finished the secondary school in a German way. It's called Abitur.
Okay.
There were only 2 Ethiopians who were the first to do so at the German school. Okay. This was in 1968.
Okay.
After that, I came to study in the University of Tübingen, where I started to study law, and then went over to history. Went to Cambridge, to Magdalen College, where I stayed another 2 years, and came to get my doctorate at the University of Frankfurt as the student of one of the greatest Ethiopian historians. He was not an Ethiopian himself, but a German called Professor Haberland, who had written many, many books on Ethiopia. And one of his most incredible books that he has brought forth was about the Ethiopian Empire.
Okay.
You know, the Ethiopian Empire seen not in historical terms, but also in psychological terms, what it meant.
Yes.
From the point of view of also religion. Yes. The intercession between worldly kingship and also religious kingship, how these 2 things went together, you know. So it was a great privilege for me to study under him, and my dissertation was on the history of Shoah.
Okay.
You see, and that was also published in everything in German, I'm afraid.
Yes.
So when I finished, of course, by that time, the revolution had broken out in Ethiopia. I was still a student in Frankfurt. I had gone in early 1974 to attend the wedding of my sister, which had taken place in February 1974.
Okay.
And I must relate a very important visit. A little before that, we're talking about the 11th, this horrible day, I'm sorry to say,
yes.
11th of September. You know, in if you look back in history, what happened on these days, the emperor was deposed on that day, although it was the Ethiopian New Year. And I'll come to give you another picture.
Yes.
On the 11th of September, 1973, the Ethiopian emperor was in Germany after he had visited his son, Crown Prince Asfa Wossen, in London, and had come to Stuttgart to open a major Ethiopian art exhibition.
Okay.
I had the great pleasure to attend to him at that time and was with him throughout that time. And I want to tell you what happened that evening. The Prime Minister of the state of Baden-Württemberg had given a big reception at one of the oldest castles just outside Stuttgart, a place called Ludwigsburg. And after dinner, there was a concert. And during the concert, the door opens and a man comes and whispers something into the ear of the Prime Minister. And his face goes absolutely blank. You saw how he was astounded by what he heard. So the Prime Minister stood up and he said, "Your Imperial Majesty, I'm afraid we have to stop here because I have to tell you the terrible news that we have now heard of the assassination of the President of Chile." It's the 11th of September. So the concert was stopped. And the next day, the emperor returned to Ethiopia.
Okay.
This was his last visit to the European continent.
Yes.
Exactly a year later, His Imperial Majesty was deposed.
Okay. What was his state of mind? You know, you spent that time when he was in Germany. What was, you know, how was his morale?
Lucid.
Yes.
Lucid as ever. As a matter of fact, I'll never forget, I was summoned to his rooms one of the day before the day he arrived.
Yes.
And he said to me, "Will you tell us what you've been doing in the last couple of months?" And I knew immediately what he was going to ask me. And I said, "Your Majesty knows better than I do what I have done, and I hope I have also the grace of Your Majesty for doing so." He smiled and he said, "We know exactly what you've been doing. We were astounded. We were astounded where you got this information, but we'll see what you're going to do and we'll talk about it when you come to Ethiopia." What had I done? I had heard rumors of the great famine that had broken in Wollo.
Yes.
And I had organized a big concert with a Spanish pianist.
Yes.
And I had raised 50,000 marks at that time.
Yes.
And was going to start with a project bringing the so-called flying doctors to Ethiopia, to the province, because at that time, you know, one of the greatest problems which we had was there were no roads to those places that were affected by the famine in Wollo.
Oh, okay.
And so these, this institution, which was very well known in Kenya since the 50s, these people came with little aeroplanes where they could land in a small strip, and they had 2 to 3 doctors and about 5 to 6 nurses and attended. And what we needed, you see, with people who have kwashikor, you cannot give them a piece of bread.
No,
you have to feed them, you know, intravenously for a few days.
Yes.
And that was my plan. And the emperor, of course, he knew that I had done it. And you mustn't forget at that time, the Imperial Ethiopian government had not yet accepted that there was a famine.
Okay.
So there was a big danger. And anyway, he said, we'll talk to you about that when you come to Addis Ababa. Of course, knowing him, I knew that he was saying was basically, well, we'll see what you young man are going to achieve, whether you are going to achieve it at all, you know.
Yes.
In any way, I was lucky. I got another sponsorship for 450,000 marks, and with 500,000 marks in those times. By the way, I should add, I got the 450,000 from the Philips Foundation in Holland.
Okay.
So I was in a position to finance for 1 year the flying doctor system in Ethiopia. So I come there and I go to London, and the Ethiopian papers are full of me. One day, the ADC of the emperor rings up my father and tells him His Imperial Majesty has commanded me to tell you, you and your wife and your firstborn son should come to the Jubilee Palace tomorrow at 1600 hours. My father said, what the hell have you done? And he didn't quite understand what it could be. So we really were open to everything, but not to what happened. And we went there, and he greeted us warmly in very familiar ways. And then I'll never forget what he said. In a time when our eyes were shut and we were unable to see the sufferings of our people, the Almighty gave you the foresight to realize this and to help your country. We have called you today to bless you and to tell you how proud we are of you.
Wow.
And that is, I must confess, one of the last times I saw the Ethiopian.
Sorry to elicit that, but that's a powerful, and I think that speaks to the man, the kindness. The famine was used as one of the main things that's used to smear the emperor.
Absolutely, and I can tell you, he had absolutely no knowledge. They hid it from him. His ministers were terrified by what had happened. It was too much for them. They couldn't face the emperor. That is the real truth. You can say so much against the emperor, but to say that he shut his eyes when his people were killed is certainly not true.
And I'm glad that this is going to go out to thousands, because this is so important. This propaganda that was used, and I say it does not fit, a man that is, doesn't love his people, doesn't invest in education to the degree that the emperor invested in education. Even the Eritrea question, and we can talk about Eritrea later or on another episode because we can't fit in everything. But, I was told that during the Italian occupation, education system only went up to the 4th grade, and it was the emperor that extended the education, that established the university in Asmara, that elevated Eritrea, and that Asmara was second only behind Addis Ababa in terms of expenditure. That to me does not sound like hatred of the Eritrean people, and I also heard that the groups, and this was John Spencer in his book Ethiopia at Bay, who was an American attorney who worked for His Majesty, said that most of the opposition groups in Eritrea in those days of federation were funded through Italy. So there was a lot of foreign undermining of this ancient brotherhood, Bahar Nagas, the sea of the Asian king, Eritrea, and it grieves my heart to see that separation. I know that you have critiques. I know that this is a very positive of the emperor, but I know that you also had some critiques of the emperor, and you're very open about some of those critiques, we've spoken about them. But in terms of the Derg period, talk to us about, in hindsight, because it was your generation that rose against His Majesty. And I say that he was a victim of his own success because of the success of modernizing. You have so many people from the rural areas coming into the city looking for employment. You're trying to scale, you can't scale fast enough. So as the progressive are now seen as the impediment to growth, and people not realizing the intricacies, and then also having corruption within the government, because we can't deny that there were other facets of the elites that wanted to keep their privilege without doing the work and the sacrifice that His Majesty and Empress Menen put in. So in hindsight, talk to us about that period of the Derg, that sweeping. There's also thought that His Majesty was senile because he did not stop the Derg with his military might. That most of the military was loyal to His Majesty. Even Princess Tananya work was concerned why he didn't act more forcefully to stop the Derg. He didn't do reprisals against the student uprisings. All of these things, people thought that maybe he was senile. Talk to us as someone who was close to the emperor in hindsight about that period, that painful period of time.
Well, you are absolutely right in saying it was probably the most painful years of my entire life.
Yes.
First of all, it was filled with hope.
Okay.
As I told you, I was already in Addis Ababa for the wedding of my sister in February. And it is exactly at that time that the old Prime Minister, Safte Zazaklilu, somebody else had been taken over the premiership, the Jindal Kacho Makonda.
Yes.
And believe you me, it was heavenly to live in those days.
Wow.
To give you one example, the way Ethiopians reacted was now everything is going to change. A real reform is going to come from the top.
Okay.
And if you see the combination of ministers of Legendal Kacho Makonda,
yes,
that group could have ruled Germany, United Kingdom, or even America. Highly great technocrats,
yes,
who had studied in foreign universities, the best that Ethiopia could ever bring together. So I would say these were the days of hope, when we really believed there was room that change from the top could happen, would come with the blessings of His Imperial Majesty.
Yes.
And that Ethiopia, the unfortunate non-commitment to new things and new developments in the past 14 years would now end. And if you see, the emperor had organized everything.
Yes.
The people were calling out for land reform. He had set up a commission for land reform.
Yes.
The people had opposed the constitution he had set up during the premiership of the Jindal Kacho Makonda, a committee to reform the Ethiopian constitution.
Yes.
They had asked that all ministers and stakeholders of the government should come in front of a court and see and explain to the Ethiopian people how they had ruled for the last 30 years. He had an expert commission also for that.
Okay.
So basically, every demand of the people had been accepted by the Ethiopian emperor.
Yes.
And reform was on its way. When Mengistu and the first people with the Derg came and firstly got rid of the civilian government,
yes,
deposed the emperor
yes,
in September of 1974, and the rule of terror then started. And if you see, the emperor had organized everything.
Yes.
The people were calling out for land reform. He had set up a commission for land reform.
Yes.
The people had opposed the constitution he had set up during the premiership of Legendar Kacho Makonnen, a committee to reform the Ethiopian constitution.
Yes.
They had asked that all ministers and stakeholders of the government should come in front of a court and see and explain to the Ethiopian people how they had ruled for the last 30 years. He had an expert commission also for that.
Okay.
So basically, every demand of the people had been accepted by the Ethiopian emperor,
Yes.
and reform was on its way when Mengistu and the first people with the Derg came and firstly got rid of the civilian government,
Yes.
deposed the emperor
Yes.
in September of 1974, and the rule of terror then started. But I want you to know that these few months were the months of hope for Ethiopia, the months of reform, where things, had they been given enough time to develop, would have really reached the stage with that within a year or two, Ethiopia would be a most formidable democratically ruled country as an emperor, as its head of state. In other words, a truly constitutional monarchy could have been established.
Okay, and that was the direction that the emperor was moving the country.
Absolutely, no doubt about it. Until they started becoming stronger and stronger, not accepting the emperor's orders anymore.
Yes.
Changing Legendar Kacho with Lej Mikael Mru, then changing him with the general, with a renowned Ethiopian general, Aman Andom.
Yes.
All, by the way, everything in the name of the emperor.
Yes, until the last minutes. Yes.
And with due respect also, my father and the others who were detained, none were detained in the name of the Derg. They're all detained in the name of His Imperial Majesty.
Okay.
I mean, we must know that, but of course he had no say at that time. We have to understand that, you see. But this is the case. But had that time been given, if people in Ethiopia had given the government of Legendar Kacho, this reformist government, some time, I assure you, Ethiopia would not be in this terrible stage it is today, and has been ever since 1974.
Who was behind the Derg? Let's go geopolitics. Who was behind the Derg in hindsight?
Well, you see, this is a very interesting question, and there are many people who believe it could be the Soviet Union and China, which for me is preposterous, because they did not believe, they might have believed in class struggle in their own countries. But don't forget, both the Soviet Union and the People's Republic of China were also in the non-aligned movement, you see, of which Emperor Haile Selassie played a very important role, as you know.
Yes.
And as far as the Soviet Union is concerned, both Khrushchev and Brezhnev were close friends of the Emperor of Ethiopia. I think I told you that the Russian, the people in Russia at that time, they used to refer to the emperor as the first anti-fascist. For them, that was the most important thing, what he did in the 36. And don't forget, Mexico and the Soviet Union were the only two countries in the world who did not recognize the invasion of Italy and the proclamation of King Emmanuel as Emperor of Ethiopia.
Yes.
All other countries did. So you see, there was a completely different thing between the emperor and in those days socialist countries. He
Yes.
visited it twice. The first major aid Ethiopia got of $100 million was from the Soviet Union in 1957, and it
Okay.
is with that money that we were able to build the oil refinery in Asfa. So it is, in my eyes, it is preposterous to believe that the Soviet Union and the People's Republic of China had anything to do with the Ethiopian Revolution. Why should they? Take China, we didn't talk about that.
Yes.
The Ethiopian emperor was highly welcomed by both Chu and Lai, and of course
Mao Zedong.
Mao Zedong, the
Yes.
then great man. And Ethiopia was the first African country to recognize the People's Republic of China on an
Yes.
embassy level, you see.
One
So
of the-
I would leave it at that and say, one thing I'm quite sure, I'm so sorry, is that the two last empires, Ethiopia and Iran,
Yes.
that the Soviet Union and the People's Republic of China had nothing to do with what happened there.
Okay. Okay. So you can draw their own conclusions in terms of the other great powers.
Absolutely. 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 Everybody is left to itself.
And we have a smart audience. We have a smart audience, so I know everybody knows what time it is. But because used to profess communism, that would be the assumption. And then of course Cuba played a role in the aftermath. Castro famously coming to Addis and some of these machinations that took place. What do you think about Cuba's involvement with the Derg?
Well, I see that it is not only an involvement with the Derg.
Yes.
I see the coming of the Cubans and coming of the Soviet Union as coming as our brothers to help us to remain Ethiopians.
Okay.
I will never forget what the Soviet Union did for us during the Somali War.
Okay.
You realize it was the greatest transport of armaments, of even tanks, the greatest transport since the Second World War.
Okay.
They transported tanks to Ethiopia.
Okay.
And I as much as I hate, as you know, the Derg,
yes,
I see that these two countries did not come to help Mengistu Haile Mariam. They came because of their great admiration for Ethiopia.
Okay.
And we should see it from that point of view.
Okay.
And although they played no role, as far as they had as good relations with the Ethiopian emperor, specifically the Russian, the Soviet Union, Cuba might have been different. But on this specific thing, we have to agree that they came to liberate Ethiopians from doom. Don't forget, they had already more or less taken up the province of Harar and were marching to Addis Ababa.
Okay.
Until the Soviet Union brought these armaments, flew them from Russia, and brought in the Cuban soldiers.
Okay.
Without doubt, I can assure you, America was behind Somalia. We're giving them arms up to their neck, you know.
Yes, yes.
And the cause of Ethiopian independence would not have
extinguished. So very complex. I try to keep abreast of geopolitics. Right now, we have an amazing uprising that's taking place on the continent of Africa with the AES, Burkina Faso, Niger, Mali. However, I want to just take some time. You told me a story that touched my heart, and I would be remiss if I didn't allow you to share it with our audience about the formation of the Organization of African Unity and His Majesty's role in bringing together the Monrovia and Casablanca groups. Just give us some of that history leading up to the formation and the importance of Ethiopia in the foundation of Africa that we see today emerging.
Well, of course, it started much, much earlier than 1963.
Yes.
Ethiopia, as the only African country that was a member of the United Nations, in every session after the Second World War, Ethiopia brought the question of the decolonization of the African continent to the United Nations year after year.
Yes.
And in the middle, as you know, the emperor was the man who brought the great Mandela to Ethiopia with an Ethiopian passport, trained him in counterinsurgency warfare and sent him back, you see, and did many other things. He tried to really plead that peace should come to the Congo.
Yes.
Ethiopia
sent troops down to the Congo.
Sent to the Congo, to the United Nations, and I'm proud to say, in those days, the commander-in-chief of the United Nations forces in the Congo was our dear Ethiopian General Yasu Mengesha, who was supreme commander of the United Nations troops there. And he, of course, played a major role in bringing peace between Algeria and Morocco.
Yes.
When he was still when he became the first chairman of the African Union at that time, of the
Organization of African Unity.
Unity, absolutely. He was the first chairman, which rotates every year, and in that time he really did something. And as far as the birth of the OAU is concerned, they were completely going two ways. And Nkrumah, together with the president of Guinea, Sekou Toure, on the one hand side, and the more or less francophone colonies, colonies on the other side, did not come to one agreement. As you rightly said, the Casablanca and the Monrovia group. Now they were going to, the conference was going to end with a friction. It was going to, they were all going to meet 3 months later in Cairo. The emperor, but was still full of hope. So it is, you must imagine, it's about 11:45 before midnight. And so the first thing he goes to Houphouët-Boigny and says, "My dear brother, please do it for me." And he answered, "For you, my emperor, I'm ready to do it." Then he goes to Nkrumah and Sekou Toure and tells them the same thing. "Please do it for me." They both had tears in their eyes, and he said, "For you, our father, we will do it." So he brings these two people together, makes them shake hands, and the birth of the Organization of African Unity is perfect. That's how it happened. You can read about it in more details in my biography of the late emperor called King of Kings.
Yes, and we'll be sure. I'm going to be ordering that book, and we'll have a book review, and we'll ask everyone to order. We'll put a link in the description so that everyone can order. It's a must-have in your collection. As you can see by the knowledge being shared here today, where we are being treated, I want to be respectful of our elders' time and energy, and I would like to have this as just a part one, because there's so much topics, so many things that I want to, I'm dancing around because my mind is exploding, because you have so much first-hand knowledge that we seldom get access to, other than in books. So I just I hope you forgive. You know, I'm asking questions all over, but
No, it doesn't matter at all.
the you know, I'm in heaven right now, just getting this knowledge. Um, One of the things that I want to just quickly get into some of the critiques that you have, because you know this channel, we're not an echo chamber. I'm very transparent. I do see Haile Selassie as the embodiment of the Almighty in flesh and bone. I do acknowledge the divinity of Yeshua, but also Melchizedek, um, you know, as a proto archetype of that Christ consciousness, you know. Um, and but for the royal family, you know, the emperor is just a great man, and we agree to disagree respectfully, because religion is, or spirituality is personal, the state is for all. But I want
Greatest things the emperor said. One of the
yes,
great things the emperor said.
yes. So
Universal, universal.
I want
Yes.
you to share for my audience, you know, some of the critiques that you have, and we spoke off camera about some of these things, but I want, you know, from someone who loves the emperor, it's clear that he loves the emperor, so we don't have to go back and forth about that. But I want people to also know, you know, other perspectives, so that when we think about the emperor, we can be armed with perspectives, so that we can reason along that line. So what are some of your critiques in hindsight of the reign of the emperor?
Of course, my critique becomes ridiculous when
Yes.
one sees what has happened to Ethiopia after the end of the emperor.
Okay.
That is one thing I have to
Yes.
say. But as a man who believed in democracy
Yes.
and in a constitutional monarchy, I find that a little bit more could have been done after the first revolution. You see, the
Yes.
Almighty showed us, if you
Yes.
don't watch your steps, look, this might happen to you. He showed it to us lively when
Yes.
so many people were killed, people who had worked with the emperor so closely. Only
Yes.
to mention the great Ras Kassa, who was
Yes.
killed during the revolution of 1960. The great prince of Tigray, Ras was killed, and many other 16 of the most brilliant Ethiopian leaders.
Yes.
So I feel that the Almighty had said to us, you must do something. Things are not, as perfect in Ethiopia as they used to be.
Yes.
And unfortunately, these 14 years, my expectations also as a member of the younger generation was that the emperor would continue leading us towards democracy.
Yes.
He would keep leading us to more power to the people,
Yes.
to more changes from the top, which we needed desperately.
Yes.
And because these changes did not come, I'll give you an example immediately. My late father, General Labi and
Yes.
General Merid were the people who were the loyalists and who played an important role in the bringing back of the emperor in 1960.
Yes.
And these were the same people who 2 years later wrote a memorandum to the emperor, which is now being circulated all over Ethiopia,
Yes.
asking for more changes, for constitutional change, for change in land tenure, and
Yes.
various other things. And unfortunately, these expectations were not fulfilled.
Okay.
There were also others who pleaded for more changes to come from the top.
Yes.
You see, I am a believer that the only way to avoid revolution is to come with reforms from above.
Yes.
History has shown this to us in many other countries.
Yes.
Look at many people don't realize the first country in the world to cut off the head of an anointed emperor was not France, not the French Revolution, but it was Great Britain when they beheaded the head of Charles I in 1641. You see? You had the terrible time of Cromwell after that. They realized then. His son, Charles II, realized that things had to change. And lo and behold, by 1666, you had the so-called Great Revolution of Great Britain, which made the crown a symbol of the country's unity. You see? But separated the crown from the actual government. You see? And it became, the one thing everybody, whether you were a Labourite, whether you were a conservative or a liberal, you were united by your belief in the sovereignty of the crown. You see?
Yes.
And with these wonderful philosophies of John Locke and his like, England became the first European country to become a constitutional monarchy. So when the French Revolution came in the 18th century, in the latter part of the 18th century, most of the French people were going to exile in Great Britain. And the British were saying, look here, what you Europeans are demanding, we already have since 150 years. The changes and so forth. And that is why Great Britain has remained a monarchy until this very day.
Yes.
And I had hoped as a young man that this also would be the case in Ethiopia, that through change, a change from above, a change which will have the leadership of the wisdom of His Imperial Majesty, he being in the forefront, as he always had been before the Second World War. As always, he was on the forefront of the liberals, of the people who wanted new things to happen to Ethiopia. And had he led that front, and had he been in a position to say, these are the reforms you want, and these are the reforms which I am freely giving to you, I can assure you Ethiopia would still be a monarchy today. And because of lack of change from the top, we had to go as far away from the Ethiopian culture, Ethiopian heritage, as far as we could, and become a communist country.
So in terms of your knowledge of the emperor, someone you knew personally, why do you think he did not move more quickly into that concept?
I have been wrecking my brains, to be honest with you. I've been wrecking my brains because it's so much unlike him. If you see his history, he was always on the forefront of everything that is novel, that is new. He, as we found out earlier on, was the founder, or one of the founders of modern-day Ethiopia.
Yes.
And that he did not take the forefront. These were his children. These were his people, who some of them had gone astray. He might have said, this is too much. After all, I was the one who brought them from the land and brought them to Ethiopia, opened a university for them, and how dare they come against me? Humanly, I can understand it.
Yes.
But looking at it, in the hindsight, I would have believed that the revolution, that terrible revolution that happened, could have been avoided if we had changes that were coming with the blessings of the Ethiopian Emperor.
Okay. Now, His Majesty was notorious for being a power balance, also balance of power. No, I was saying that His Majesty was very famous for balancing of powers, and playing power centers off of each other. Do you think his reluctance to shift into a constitutional monarchy was as a result of some of those internal politics? Because as we, even though Ethiopia is, rapidly converted into a modern state, of course, the ancient kingdoms and alliances are still there. The other branches of the Solomonic dynasty, who many felt that his claim to the throne was precarious because it's coming through the female line. There were people that had their own loyalties, the great Rasses who, for generations, hundreds of years, controlled people, because a lot of times, and you made this clear to me in a way that no one has done, in terms of His Majesty being the first supreme leader of Ethiopia after the war, because of the creation of the Imperial Army, where before each of the kingdoms had their separate independent armies that were marshaled, when the war drums were beat, everybody would come and give fealty, or they would send tribute. But they had autonomy in terms of the administration, and they had complete rule over the people who were domiciled in their domain. That ended after the Italian War. But the feelings and some of these internal politics, because he also limited the ascension to the throne to his bloodline, which I know probably didn't go over well, in the Constitution, to the other branches. And I know he did that to eliminate the ceaseless wars for the throne that took place in history. But do you think that his reluctance to rapidly go into that constitutional monarchy and to hold that absolute power was as a result of trying to balance some of these internal powers?
I think you are very right, especially you being a great master and a knowledgeable man of the age of the era of princes in Ethiopia. You know in what kind of dire situation we were. I think what you said plays a very important role, but there's a second thing which we must also not forget.
Okay.
Who were the teachers of the late emperor?
Yes.
These were French monks.
Okay.
And since his childhood, his image of a government was always centralized. He believed in centralized power, just like the French.
Yes.
The French have never known any autonomy of any of their provinces. His predecessor, Menelik II, was exactly the opposite.
Yes.
He believed it might have been feudal, but Ethiopia under the era of Menelik, as you rightly said yourself, was it had unity, because the emperor allowed the other leaders to be part of that united Ethiopia without leaving the country and being the leaders of their own provinces. To give you one example, the most terrible war before the Battle of Adwa was the fight between Emperor Menelik II and the King of Walaita, King Tona.
Tona.
Okay. Many people were massacred.
Okay.
But what happened afterwards? He brought Tona and said, as long as you swear loyalty to me, as long as you're ready to bring troops when my country, our country, is invaded by foreign powers, I will give you back the country of your fathers. And he reinstated him as king of Walaita. Okay. He became one of his greatest allies.
Okay.
He did the same thing Emperor Menelik did with the kingdoms of Kaffa, specifically with the Muslim kingdoms of Jimma. Some of them he Christianized, like Abajifar, Morodas, and gave them Ethiopian titles. But Abajifar, as a Muslim leader, he let him be there be the king and ruler of his country. And it is really there you can see the difference between Emperor Haile Selassie
Yes.
and Emperor Menelik. Isn't it incredible that this close friend of Emperor Menelik II, the leader of Jimma, Abba Jifar, that his son became the first traitor? He and Haile Selassie Guksa, the emperor's own son-in-law, were the first people to give themselves up to the Italians in 1936. And I know the grandson, Babia. And I once day asked to him, how could this happen? I know of the relationship between your grandfather, Abba Jifar, and Emperor Menelik. How did it come that your father had to completely change the way? And you know what he said to me?
What did he say?
He said, I asked my father this as a young man. And he answered, I did this because Teferi got rid of the privilege which Menelik had gave us.
Wow.
You see, this is the problem. It is that his vision of how to rule the world was always centralized. And I'm not saying that for those days that centralization did play an important role.
Yes.
But that was absolutely not everything that Ethiopia required. It required also the acceptance of all the natural leaders of the different provinces. And had the Ethiopian Emperor Haile Selassie I, had he got the same kind of vision as Emperor Menelik, he would have allowed those kingdoms to continue as long as they felt as one nation, as long as there was no reason for secession.
I think he may have been concerned with the recent history. A young Kassa merchant who escorted the Napier expedition, to Tedros's gate, and then inherited a huge volume of British armaments, which then put him above Emperor Menelik, who was his peer, who had to bend the knee with a stone on his shoulder. And this, I think, His Majesty was looking at the history, and that when they had this autonomy, it opened the gate for these European powers.
That's true.
I mean, even King Haile Selassie had foreign engagements that were different than the kings in Gondar. He established his own connections. So I think His Majesty, knowing the history, knew that this would leave Ethiopia very vulnerable to foreign intervention. And of course, the historic, the revolution, Ras Haile from Gojam was also, a fomenter of rebellion and others. And I can't emphasize this enough that, when we're looking at the emperor, we have to look at the internal displeasure that because of all of these nobilities and these houses that they displace. And also, they did not see Teferi as a strong claimant to the throne because of his connection through the female matrilineal line, of Ras Makonnen. So, a lot of us in the West, we see the emperor, and because he was so successful, we overestimate the internal power that he had. And there were still many players, movers and shakers, that had extreme ability to cause disruption. And I always say, what would have happened if Teferi was unopposed and he was able to implement all of his reforms? How far would Ethiopia have been? And a lot of the because a lot of people talk about the government responding to the rebellions and the atrocities that happened. It's hard to attribute these to the emperor, to me, because you cannot let rebellion just go unopposed.
Yeah, I agree.
The people that you sent to the rebellion oftentimes had their own grievance with these. Once you unleash the hell of war, it's very difficult to put it back into a bottle. And this is what we're seeing now in Ethiopia. These ancient wounds coming to the surface. His Majesty famously said Ethiopia must never be divided by tribal lines. And
This is the whole point. Yes.
exactly what has happened. And we weep,
Well,
you know, to
well,
see.
to strengthen what you said,
Yes.
There are many people who believe the last Ethiopian emperor was very traumatic about the other tribes. He only favored the Amharas.
Yes.
Absolutely untrue.
Yes.
The late emperor of Ethiopia, he didn't care what color you were, which ethnic group you belonged, whether you were Muslim and whether you were a Christian. For him, one thing mattered, and that was loyalty. You see, that is it. You cannot say that the Ethiopian emperor, Haile Selassie I, favored one of the many ethnic groups in Ethiopia. He treated them equally, all of them. There was nothing to be said about that. And you just look at the people who have come to power under him are from all the different regions of Ethiopia. And you are right. Of course, the aristocracy never accepted him in that formidable way, which should have been done. If I may say so, it was my grandfather, Ras Kassa, perhaps the only Ethiopian prince, who never, not even once, although his claim to the throne was far greater than that of the late emperor, he was his most loyal and most devoted friend throughout his time.
Why do you think Ras Kassa was so loyal?
This is something,
he saw
there
the
are many
brilliance?
stories about it.
Yes.
But I have to tell you, I told you that Ras Kassa was also a philosopher. He was a man of the church. And I have been told by my father, something must have happened when they both were in the court of Emperor Menelik II, that he saw in this young man who was 6 years younger than him, that made him such I mean, you could only say the only defender of Rastafari, who himself didn't want to say in 1916, he didn't want to become emperor himself. He said, he is much better suited than I am. You see, that is where the friendship of the two is undeniable. It is more than blood. It is more than blood, I have to tell you.
Wow. Mighty. We need a Ras Kassa film or documentary.
No, he was an incredible man, I must tell you. And so it is a very important question which you are asking me. And this is what I'm telling you, what my father told me, why this relationship was so good. You know, there is also one thing which many Ethiopians even don't know. You see, in 1916, when Dejazmatch was deposed by the Ethiopian church and the Rastafari became the crown prince of Ethiopia, the then Archbishop of Ethiopia, Abuna Matthäus, was afraid that a civil war might break out again. And Ras Kassa might claim the throne himself, although he knew how closely these two people were associated. So do you know what he did?
What did he do?
He took both of them, Rastafari and Ras Kassa, to the Church of Trinity and made them take the Holy Communion together, and saying that one would never be an enemy to the other, that they all would go one way. So the bondage was not just family related, it was also blessed by the church.
Wow.
So there was no way out for both of them from this attachment and this, and they ruled Ethiopia together.
Wow.
You see?
Give me 2 more questions. One, you had an interesting critique about the wardrobe of His Majesty post. And this is something that some Rastafari struggle with because we're very African-centric. and some don't like to see his mind seeing the suits and the
Yes.
and all of these things. And I didn't know that Ethiopians also some share that same sentiment. Please just articulate what the line of critique is in terms of his wardrobe post exile and prior to exile.
Well, you see, I say that if you see the uniforms the emperor was wearing, both his military and his civil uniforms before the Second World War, you will find him always in Ethiopia. There was something Ethiopian about it. He had the robe, he had that famous cloak, and if you see the picture of the Ethiopian emperor in Geneva, you see him in a black robe, and underneath it, he had the Shamba. This is how mostly the then world knew him. After the Second World War, and before then, there are also pictures of the emperor in uniforms, in the uniform of a field marshal, but that always had Ethiopian touches. The gold embroidery was Ethiopian, had nothing to do with the European thing, But slowly and steadily, after the Second World War, he started leaving that wardrobe. Perhaps is also his wish of reforming the country in that way. He wanted his countrymen to become more modern, to become part of a civilizing mission, you see. He might have said, if I do this, the rest of them will also start wearing suits instead of shambas. We don't know. But then all his uniforms became European, basically English, with the only exception, and thank God that was there, if you see his most formal gown, which he wore on state visits, with the lion mane headdress.
Okay.
That was still something Ethiopian.
Okay.
So that is good. By the way, I told you there is a book called The Emperor's New Clothes, written by an Ethiopian member of the government, and who was also an ambassador to Mexico. And he tells us a very interesting story. He said, as a young man, when I went to college in Great Britain, in London, every Sunday I used to go to Madame Tussauds, the wax museum.
Yes.
And there was an effigy of the late emperor where he wore that famous picture where he wears the gown, the cloak, and the shamba. And that was his effigy in Madame Tussauds, the wax museum. He said, I used to go there, remember my country, and be proud. He was the embodiment of Ethiopia for me.
Yes.
And he said, later in the 50s, he had become a civil servant and comes to a conference to London. And he said, as I used to do as a child, I said, on a Sunday morning, I decided to go to Madame Tussauds to see the effigy of the emperor.
Yes.
At this time, he said the old one had gone, and there was an effigy of the emperor in an English field marshal's uniform, which made me think, what has happened? Could his time in England, his exile, could it have changed him to in such a way that he forgot all his Ethiopian ancestry and became an Englishman? But I personally would not see it that way.
Yes. Fascinating. And I shared with you off camera that I think it was a calculated move because of the international diplomacy push, and to take appearance out of the conversation to get to the substance. He came as them, a reflection of what they were doing in order to advocate on behalf of his people, because you would never find a speech of the emperor where he's not advocating for Ethiopia or for Africa. It doesn't exist. So he came in there. He's like, he put on a uniform to do the work that he was doing. That was the appropriate uniform for him strategically for that time. Final question is, how do you feel about the Rastafari movement and learning that there was these people that were in the islands that were venerating your ancestor as a divine being? When did you first come into that knowledge, and what do you think about the Rastafari? What are your thoughts on the Rastafari community?
Well, first of all, I should say that the only people at this very moment who are still raising the standard of African unity, of Pan-Africanism, are our brothers and sisters, the Rastafarians. I'm afraid you won't find that kind of Pan-Africanistic feeling that I grew up with. I must tell you a beautiful story. I was 15 years of age in 1963 when the Organization of African Unity was founded.
Okay.
As I told you, I was in the German school, and we had a game between Ethiopian students. You went up to an Ethiopian fellow pupil, and said, "Where do you come from?" He said, "Are you out of your mind? I am 100% Ethiopian." Bang, wrong answer. What am I supposed to say? Well, that was yesterday. From today on, you have to say, I am an African. This is how I grew up with. And this is the feeling that I see up to this very moment in our brothers and sisters from the Rastafari movement. I adore them for that. And we are very, very proud that they're still upholding this institution. As far as the question of the divinity of the late emperor is concerned,
Yes.
as you rightly said, this is a religion which is private. We might be of different, I might have a different attitude, but that does not mean we should be fighting against each other. Because as the late emperor said himself, and you did say it yourself today, religion is personal and the country is communal. So I accept that, and I dare say I have many Rasta friends from a very long time. One of my closest friends being one of the greatest musicians in that part of the world, Akula.
Okay, yes, we've had Akula on the show. We've had Akula on this program.
Yes, but I have also been in a position to be on a forum with a number of intellectuals from the Caribbean who are all Rastas, and of course I have a great admiration for Marcus Garvey.
Yes.
And his Pan-Africanistic work as perhaps the first Pan-Africanist leader that we had. A lot to be learned from that. And I sincerely hope that one day one thing will come to existence. In order to find a way out between the beliefs that many Ethiopians have, or I would say all Ethiopians have, because as you know, from 130 million Ethiopians, about 60% are Christian, 35% are Muslim, and 5% are of other nations. Of that. But in order to make it easier to find the bridge between us and our brothers and sisters from the Caribbean, I would, and I have already said it before, my greatest hope would be that one day the Rastafari community would send a delegation to the Patriarch of Ethiopia, asking and pleading the Ethiopian Orthodox Church to make the last emperor of Ethiopia, Haile Selassie I, a saint.
Okay.
Because this has been done everywhere. In Russia, they have made the entire royal family as martyrs. They have been accepted as saints of the Russian Orthodox Church. And that might be a bridge for us, you see, because every saint that we in the Christian world have was a human being.
Yes.
You see. So I might say this might not be enough for our brothers and sisters,
Yes.
the Rastafarians, but it could become a bridge, you know.
Yes, yes. And I think some Rastafari are already advocating for that. We have many Rastafari in the church. And I interview some of them on this program as well. Many of them have been baptized and fully accept the doctrine of the church, although they privately still may accept the divinity of His Majesty, but they will hold like Jesus Christos in terms of the primacy. But this was fascinating. This is part one. I thank you so much. So much more that we could touch, but we can't be greedy, family. We have to let our elder rest his voice. He was so kind and so generous with the information. On behalf of the global Lion Pride family, Rastafari family, I just want to thank you for coming on the platform. You have truly elevated this platform. I know many will be enlightened, fascinated by this. We also do have an Ethiopian audience, so I know many young Ethiopians will also have a chance to watch this as well. And I hope that they are more enlightened, because I know a lot of this history is not taught in Ethiopia anymore from the Dirk time, the history of the Imperial period. So I pray that this is enlightening in that regard. And I hope that you will accept our invitation to come back on the platform in a future time, maybe become a semi-regular contributor, because there's so much. And I believe that we have to strengthen our bonds between Rastafari and Ethiopia. I tell Rastafari people that we are the glue that will ensure that Pan-Africanism works, because we are not tribal. We have Rastafari from every tribe, every part of the continent. The movement is spreading across the continent with the young people as we speak. And so I really feel that we can create that unity. And most children on the continent, the first time they hear about a united Africa is in a reggae song sung by a Rastafari creative. You know what I mean? So we are already in the fabric of this great continent and the great uprising, and we have a lot of work to do. And guided with elders such as yourself, I know that we will win, and I'm confident in the victory of good over evil. Any final words to the global family before you leave?
First of all, I would like to thank you for allowing me to come on this wonderful program of yours. It's been a delightful day, full of reminiscences and also of remembering people who are no longer with us,
Yes.
but will be with us all the time in our fond memories. May their memories live forever. And perhaps we will one day be able to raise the flag of a united Ethiopia, so that this wonderful country of ours will become what is supposed to be all the time, a great country, powerful to call itself one of the leading Pan-Africanist countries in the world. This is how our history has been managed by the late Emperor Haile Selassie I. Let us take his example. Let us forget the differences brought upon us by foreigners, by words like ethnic diversity and other words which do not befit our language of oneness. Let us pray that also Ethiopia will be able one day to recognize the great motto that we will have a united Ethiopia under God, indivisible, but with every human being proud of his own ancestral history, his own heritage, his own ethnicity, but still believing in the motto of unity in diversity and diversity in unity. Thank you very much for having me with you today.
Give thanks, give thanks. There you have it. Rastafari Independent Non-Aligned Media is here. We are bringing the voices of the lions for the people. And you know why? Because the time has come for the lions to tell our own story. And this is the lion's voice.
Lion voice. Well, from to us a son was born and a child was given, and the government shall be upon his shoulders, and his name shall be called the Wonderful Counselor, Everlasting Father, the Prince of Peace. Them call him Rastafari. When he was born, rain fall from the sky. Them call him Rastafari. When he was grown in airplanes he fly. They call him Rastafari. The lion break the chain, weep not, don't cry. Them call him Rastafari. Read the Revelation chapter 5 verse 5. Then born near the city of Harar, the inspiration for Bob Marley's guitar. People crowd him like some big superstar. It no matter if England or Cote d'Ivoire, no matter if you're brown or black like Qatar. Haile Selassie I fi end all tribal war. A time fi gather Mount Zion, fi drive solar car from the car straight to Zanzibar. Who we are, the sons of Rastafari. When he was born, rain fall from the sky. Rastafari. When he was grown in airplanes he fly. Then Rastafari. The lion break the chain, weep not, don't cry. Then Rastafari. Read the Revelation chapter 5 verse 5. Royal governor from the age of 13 years. Leave the palace, fi go back in a school with him peers. He's the head without fear, he's one to be revered. When them call his name, then the heathen scare. Plus the priest concerned, and him teachers concerned. Cause all this little youth want fi do is just learn. But he wait his turn, till him turn the Dejazmatch. The people rejoice when him crown as the Ras they call him Rastafari. When he was born, rain fall from the sky. Then Rastafari. When he was grown in airplanes he fly. Then Rastafari. The lion break the chain, weep not, don't cry. Then Rastafari. Read your Revelation chapter 5 verse 5. Well, Ras Kassa call a meeting with all him general them. Say him funeral a come, and him have something fi tell them. Him say, we fight together since the days of Adawa. Him say, protect my son and help him unite Africa. Well, him generals, them start cry when them hear this sound. Them say your wishes are come and then bow down to the ground. When him funeral they come, it shock the whole town. If you see this little youth, him have a army surround, they call him